Welcome, everybody. This is the beginning of our podcast.
Yeah, today we're talking the early years of the Beatles, specifically first two albums, Please Please Me and With the Beatles.
Yeah, with the Beatles.
Not Meet the Beatles.
No. What's the difference?
A word. Yeah.
Okay.
This is already off to a bad start.
It just started, though.
Yeah. Yes.
All right, so let's talk about, like, the context of, like, the Beatles. I guess, you know, everybody kind of knows the story that they grew up in Liverpool and they started in the clubs out there. But can you give more context to it? If you know anything?
These first two albums are the albums they made before they ever came to America at all. So this is straight British Beatles. They've never had a hot dog. They've never been to a baseball game.
Before the British invasion.
Yeah. John F. Kennedy is still alive. I believe during both of these releases. Yeah. Meet the Beatles came out in November. Honestly, that might be pretty close. November 22nd of 1963. Mm-hmm. When did JFK die? Can you look that up?
Pull that shit up.
It's cutting close.
JFK.
And then fucking John Lennon was shot.
Let's see.
Dead air. Yeah, I think he was a president or something.
So, yeah, he was shot on November 22nd in 1963.
He was shot on November 22nd?
Yeah. Is that the same date that you said?
Yeah, that's the fucking date.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Oh, whoa. So, okay. Well, that's a really weird coincidence, actually.
Yeah, and also Please Please Me came out on the 22nd of March. Mm-hmm. So,
and
exactly 8 months.
And was that, like, the same for America? Was that its British release, or... It's okay if you don't know. That's kind of like a very specific question.
Because the American releases and how they were rolled out is so all over the place. So I believe I've read about this once. The first one, Please Please Me, only like some small label was kind of able to get their hands on it, or really they didn't pop here, so it didn't really matter.
Right.
So it made its way over here somehow, but only like specific like DJ like jockeys kind of.
Yeah.
If you had it, you had it. If you were into it, you were into it.
Hey, I just heard about this band. You know, they're called the Beatles.
Which is like, I would have loved to have been like introduced. Most good music, that's like the purest way to be introduced to it, is like this band nobody's even heard of, but you just hear like the sound coming out on the radio.
Yeah.
And that would have been sick to hear like the Beatles. I don't know what singles they would have been playing like on the... I'm assuming they were probably playing Please Please Me.
Yeah.
That seemed like, album title.
Yeah, in the beginning, it's interesting to know what, like, popped off first and kind of, like, what made the Beatles, what gave them their kind of start.
Yeah, so I've heard the first album described by, the famous producer George Martin as their live set, and maybe even members of the Beatles have described it like their whatever current live set was on at the time. Mm-hmm. They basically just recorded those songs, and they recorded it all on the same day. So
they recorded the whole album in the same day?
Yeah, the whole album's recorded on the same day.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's fucking good.
I mean, it's very good. I think the first impressions that I got from it is like they started off like 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like, they were firing on all cylinders from the very beginning, which is cool to see of a band. Like, they didn't need a warm-up, They didn't need, like, 3 albums to get their groove. They kind of just, like, were...
To find themselves.
Young. Yeah, to find themselves, ready. Yeah.
We see pictures of them when they're, like, 14, 15 years old. So, I guess those were their developing years, which, like, that's so rare for bands to be together for that long. Like, so many bands start, like, when you're that age and they don't stay together.
Right.
So, by the time, I guess, they made it to record or whatever, they were all gelled with each other. And with the first album especially, you could hear, like... I don't know, the time. Like a lot of rock hasn't happened yet. So you hear the influences of like the 50s and like early 60s
Yeah.
and stuff.
A lot of Motown in there.
Yeah, but they never like, you could hear like a bunch of other bands who were influenced by that type of music, but all of their songs are very like busy and in your face, and there's a lot of fire and like personality, which the Beatles, you know, if you've ever seen footage of them or like heard them, you know, people do impressions of them all the time. They have tons of personality. They're very funny guys.
Right.
So I think the music really shows, like, there's no really rules. They're not staying inside any type of like songwriting box or structure that you have in like a normal rock song, except there are some like it's mainly covers, but a few like originals where they go into like a 1-4-5 blues thing. I mean, when we go through the songs, I'll talk about it more, but those are probably just like my least favorite like Beatles songs.
Yeah, I think me too. I just feel like their more pop influences, you know, kind of shine through better for me personally. And it kind of defined their later albums as well, I think. They kind of leaned into that.
Yes. Yeah, most definitely.
On the pop side. But I think one thing that jumped out to me with listening to like all this early Beatles, but especially like the first album, is like it's 14 songs, but it's only 30 minutes long.
It looks, when I was I was like, there's a lot of like songs on it, and then I paid attention to the album length too. Yeah, it's only 30 minutes long.
Yeah, so most songs are like 2 minutes, like just a little over 2 minutes, and they have so much life in them, and they, I don't know, it's like it just feels like they should start and end right there. So I would love to know more about like kind of what the logic was behind that. You know, I wonder if that was like a decision by George Martin or like a conscious decision for them to kind of make like these really short songs.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. You know, like I said, this was like a live set, so I'd like to hear like what the songs were before George Martin had touched them.
True.
But so yeah, that's one of my favorite things, is just how fast they kind of get things going, and they, you know, they don't wait on anything too long.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, a lot of music, you get like, you know, you have a long intro, and then by the time the song starts, it's not even that good, and it's like, we just kind of, why do we spend all that time getting here?
Yeah.
But then they go like right at it, like
just boom.
We're starting with the goodness, and we're gonna like keep it going.
Yeah, I agree. And they just keep it short and sweet. And I wish that was in music more, especially like in the streaming age. I feel like it would benefit from shorter songs and kind of shorter records like this, and you see it kind of coming, but it just makes the most sense, you know, especially nowadays with streaming, with the amount of things that come out and like the way our brains kind of absorb music. I think short and sweet is always not always better, but it can be much better, especially with songs like these.
Yeah. I mean, as far as music now, I guess you hear short songs, but they're just always like very one dimensional. And there's, you know, obviously I guess we're just talking about pop, like the most popular music, I guess.
Yeah.
Because there's all sorts of music that's doing all sorts of things right now.
Right. There's
so
like
let's
so
not
much
try
music.
to like sound too boomer about it.
That's
like
true.
About
like,
music now. Yeah.
Music these days, the kids these days.
Which, if we're talking about the Beatles, that's probably what the audience is gonna be. So maybe we should go boomer.
Yeah, don't remind him of JFK's assassination.
Comments
Memories.
like, I was like 7 years old.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I would say that I do enjoy the short and sweet songs, and I like when I see it in today's age too. So
yeah. So I don't know. Let's go into the songs, I guess. So I mean, right off the bat.
So please me, right? That's what we're talking about. Yep.
Yeah. Please me. Released 22nd of March, 1963. I still think it's weird. Well, one, that the second album was released the day John F. Kennedy died.
No, wait. Did you say March?
No. The first album is the 22nd of March. The second one is the 22nd of November.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, that is really weird, but
Yeah. But
Okay.
both on the 22nd.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
And Please Please Me came first, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first one. Okay. March 22nd. Cool.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I saw her standing there. One of the most recognizable rock songs of all time. They
Yep.
really get things going. I mean, what a song to like open up your first album with.
I mean, just the intro, like it's so iconic and it's still iconic to this day. And I guess thinking of it in the context of that it's the Beatles' first album is really cool too, because it's like, boom, we're here, you know?
Right. Rock greatness. Paul McCartney, I think, counts for 1, 2, 3. But yeah, there's only really good things to say about this song. You get it, classic, Paul McCartney, sweet vocals, and then classic Beatles, harmonizing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, the song's like over before you even know it. It's just kind of like a good ride the whole time. Seems very rock and roll for the time. Obviously, it's not like their later stuff at all, but I enjoy listening to it.
Yeah.
It's nice.
I love how the drums sound on it too. Like, I think the drums on this whole album really sound like so full for the day. And it would have been interesting to hear him through kind of like what people were listening to at the time. So I guess like radios and like record players. But I just think like all the drums sound really nice and full.
Yeah, that's one thing I kind of the whole album itself, because I mean, and I'm not going to talk about, I guess, the later years where they get, really experimental. So like there's all sorts of wild sounding things. But I think even like the first 3 albums, like A Hard Day's Night, well, they start experimenting with like overdubs and stuff. But like this one sounds like very clean and polished and nice. And I really like the sound of this album. And it's like the first one. So yeah, I'd be interested to to get like to know more about the sessions, because if it's them like working with each other for the first time, George Martin and the Beatles, like there must have been like a big like separation between the ways that they worked. Like they were probably a lot more collaborative like later on in their career, but they were doing their thing. I don't think he had ever worked with a rock band before either. I think he only did orchestras. So this was like very new, and that's why he produces, I guess, very like it's like very experimental and forward thinking. It wasn't like used to like rock bands.
Yeah, one thing I was reading on Wikipedia was that George Martin liked to put really big songs, or what he thought was going to be big songs, on the front of the record and on the very back, because he said, what you're going to remember is the beginning and the end.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so and I read that, and I thought it was really interesting in the context of these first early albums, but especially like I Saw Her Standing There, you can really see that intention, And
of course with the closer, Twist and Shout.
Yeah.
Those are probably, I mean, as far as like recognizable recordings, like that you would hear just anywhere, and those are probably the songs. The only other, Love Me Do, which is in the middle somewhere of the album.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, for the time that must have been like such a banger to hear like Twist and Shout like in 1963. I can't even imagine. Yeah.
And I liked, they even like kind of in their later years of touring, they kept that as an opener, and it was they do a shorter version of it. But
really?
Yeah, so I think they even recorded that song at the last during that long day of recording the entire first Beatles album. And George Martin chose to put that song at the end so John's voice would be shot, so that when he's screaming, and that's like,
damn, it's so intentional. Like there's so many little things that are like intentional with the Beatles where you're just like, how do they have the foresight to think of these things?
Yeah, I mean, smart. I mean, good for us as
yeah.
But just another great thing on this album, like John Lennon, the songs that he sings, his voice. One of my favorite things is just kind of him singing like rhythm and blues type songs, and then you just get that little bit of crack in his voice, and it's one of my favorite things in popular music. What's the cover? He's Baby It's You. That one especially.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I like the original recording of that song. I like the Beatles, and then
who's it originally by?
The Shirleys.
The Shirleys.
Even say it. Yeah,
it sounds familiar, but I couldn't name a song. That's cool. It has this really bubblegum pop aspect to it, and I think one thing that shined out to me, especially on a track like that, is like you are coming out of the 50s. Like it's 1963. It's the early 60s. When you think of the Beatles as a 60s band, you kind of think of them as like I think as late 60s, but especially with this album, the 50s really shines through, and it adds a really nice touch to their music that I think doesn't really come through in the later records as much.
Yeah. I've always liked that about this album is like that feel of it.
It's got a 50s vibe, yeah.
They wear like their influences on their sleeves, and they kind of do a very good job of just making it fresh and like, enjoyable to us. But then also like how you said the Baby It's You has like a bubblegum pop type vibe. I could kind of, between the songs they've composed on this album and even on the next one with the Beatles and their originals, there's kind of there's like a wildness to their originals. Like they're not really thinking about, it's just like a lot of feel with like how long they're doing things in like, oh, we're doing this part, then we're going to this next part right away. It's not like progressing like how like a normal Motown or like classic like rock song would, I mean, for the time.
Yeah.
Just another like very unique thing.
There's always like crazy weird parts in Beatles songs that is super unconventional. Even now, I mean, they'll go into something that's like Bridge 2 or something. I don't know. It's just nobody does that anymore. But yeah, I think Baby It's You is cool too because I like the solo on it. I thought it had a really, really cool solo, and it kind of shows the power of just playing like the chorus as a solo. Something that, you hear in Nirvana, right? Like all the time or from, it's a cool trick. But yeah, they always had it down from the very beginning. I'm guessing that was George.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, seems to be just a smart approach to music in general. Because if, you're going with the chorus, you're starting to, I mean, it's not wrong. It's already working for the song.
Right.
So if you're trying to like start some other like BS, like you might fuck up the song.
You might derail it.
Yeah.
But doing a chorus usually never derails it, so that's cool.
Yes. Do you have a favorite song on this album?
That's a good question. I would say, let's see, P.S. I Love You. That's a great one. Yeah, I like the harmonies on that one a lot.
And they just start right out the gate with
a weird one that I really like is A Taste of Honey, because I'm a huge like White Album fan, and I think that is kind of that weird, like kind of creepy psychedelic thing that like Paul can kind of like pull off like nobody else, and
it's like early Paul McCartney voice, so that thing is just really going,
and it's just super foreshadowing like a lot of those really like psychedelic tracks that Paul ends up getting into. So
there is something very psychedelic about that recording, right? And like the tune, it's like you said, like creepy kind of. I've always really loved the song. I always felt like it just gave me like it could be like in a Tarantino movie vibe.
I was just about to say, yeah, it's a total like Quentin Tarantino vibe, kind of that vintage vibe, yet still like eerie. So I would say that's a really good one. And then of course like Love Me Do. That's a really great track.
Yeah. Classic pop song. If you haven't heard it, I don't know, man.
Listen to it right now. Like that's such an iconic Beatles song. Kind of one that there's a lot of Beatles songs that are huge in their own right, but sometimes they get kind of swept under the rug, I would say. Like, and that's kind of one of them that I would say you just don't hear as much, but it's an amazing song. It's one of the Beatles' best songs.
Yeah, and it has a interesting like there's like 3 versions of the song. There's some original, which I don't know how much of a release it got. It's on like one of the anthology, whatever compilations, and that has the original drummer Pete Best on drums. And it's
really?
Yeah, it's very different. It sounds, I think it's like slower and like country sounding, and he's doing some different beats.
I didn't know that he was on that one. What would you describe like his drumming was like versus Ringo? If you had any comments on that.
I've never really like cared to pay attention to like I've heard obviously like a lot of their demos from before, or even like tapes. There's one EP of them, I think, trying to get signed to like a record label. So I don't know if they went into a record label studio to record to show them, or if they were like sending it out to different labels. They like cover, I don't know, a few songs, but yeah, I mean, I don't really have much of an opinion about his drumming besides that one recording of Love Me Do I heard, and it just, I don't know, it was slower. It wasn't Ringo, obviously.
Right.
It didn't sound like Ringo.
Yeah.
I mean, I think George Martin actually like kind of he said he wasn't a good studio drummer, specifically.
Pete Best.
Yeah, and separately the Beatles were kind of done with him and like kicked him out.
Yeah.
But yeah, now that's ringing a bell. So, he could probably play drums in like a club in like a rock band, but then when it comes to, getting mic'd up and like, recording, I'm sure he just wasn't good. And then the second one is Ringo Starr playing drums. And I think that was released as a single in the UK, obviously.
Yeah.
I don't know how, the releases went here.
Yeah. Sometimes, I'm not even going to lie, like Beatles releases I get tripped up on because there's different releases. They release some songs as singles. They release some songs twice on albums. They release some songs in America different order,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it gets confusing.
Yeah, I mean, we're just going to go UK. If you pull it up on the streaming app, that's the order that we're going in.
Yeah, the streaming app.
Yeah, so we're just going to go with like the classic, whatever UK releases. Yeah, so that second version, I think it was released as a single, but then that's not what's on the album. There's a third version, and that's the album version. And that's with a studio session drummer, Andy White.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
And Ringo's playing tambourine.
Interesting.
Yeah, and then that was recorded on the September of 11th that year.
Wow.
62. So you probably won't forget it.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's insane. Did he play on any other Beatles songs, or was that it?
No, that was it.
Wow. Okay.
As far as like record.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I think one thing that stands out on this album too is Ringo's drumming. I think it's just I think it's great. It's undisputedly great. He sits so well in the Beatles. Like he is a real functioning member of the Beatles and one of the best drummers alive. The things that he plays are so perfect for these songs, and honestly, for like a drummer, it can be easy to like fuck these songs up, or play something that's kind of generic, but like he always makes it incredible.
Yeah, the way they gel is kind of I can't imagine gelling with people. Like it's so unique.
Yeah. And
also in the context of like record, recorded sound and like a rock band, because they're not James Brown's band, If they were like put in, it's like it's its own thing. They have their own like gel.
They're not like John Coltrane.
Most rock bands have their own, whatever, the Clash, punk. Right. It's like not this, but like their groove is just like how they lock in together. Because Ringo is just obviously, he gets crazier as like time goes on, but this is like young Ringo, and he's like really bashing those drums.
Yeah,
and I really like Please Me, like the fills, like the do. That's actually kind of his drumming is what made me like the song. I used to not really like that song, and then I saw a video of them playing it live, and then I was just like, fuck Ringo, like, and then it made me like the song.
Yeah, and to play in those stadiums too, like when they eventually did, at that time, the sound wasn't the greatest. This is a little more down the line. This isn't 1963, but when they did start playing stadiums, like sound wasn't the greatest then, so you had to play pretty loud. So
Yeah, that's true.
and he's a super loud drummer, stadium drummer.
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen like, I don't know. From video, there's like certain shows that I like from like it would have been cool to see the Beatles there.
Mm-hmm.
One of them being when they first come to America. It must have been right after Ed Sullivan, so February or something. They must have played Ed Sullivan and then played some sort of Coliseum type thing or some venue in Washington D.C.
Okay.
And that shit looks fucking dope. They were like kind of on fire. There's a little like technical. I think Paul's mic was maybe like a little bit too quiet.
Yeah.
Or something, but it's very like DIY because people weren't thinking of like a band being this big before. So Ringo like comes out and it's a roundabout, like if you're going to see, Dane Cook or something.
Yeah.
But so Ringo like is like turning like his drum set manually, like as they play a couple songs, and then he turns the whole kit around. And like it's a great and everybody's super excited to see them and they're excited to be there because they're just in the United States for the first time.
Yeah,
and they're playing all of these songs because Hard Day's Night came out summer of '63, so this is like 64. This is February '64, so all of this material is like what they're playing.
Oh,
yeah,
awesome.
So it's just like, I would have loved, just like they're excited to play, like, everything's very new.
Right.
There's a lot of fire like in there.
Seeing these super new Beatles songs that they're just like so hyped for.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? One song that I thought was really cool, that I am kind of remembering now is Chains. I thought Chains was a really great one, especially like vocal wise. Some of the harmonies on that were really cool, and it kind of goes back to that bubblegum pop vibe, that 1950s vibe that kind of gets lost along the Beatles discography.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's one of the other the covers. So
there we go.
Baby, it's
Yeah.
So it's like your brain kind of knows,
right?
Saying like bubblegum pop, and then George, I think, is the lead on that.
Okay.
Too, so yeah.
Who is that song by?
Tune. When I see the names, it's just like Ernie Popples and the Ho-Hos. Like, who knows? It's just a bunch of...
Yeah. Mama Jones and the Boomtowns or some shit.
Might have to cut that.
What?
Mama Jones.
No, I didn't mean any shit by that.
Yeah, we'll cut that. But, yeah. The artists that they cover, I don't know who the most famous... Because even Twist and Shout, that's a cover. So, yeah, there's good stuff about the Beatles that like gets me to like those songs. Just Twist and Shout, it's not really like a composition that would be like my favorite, but just the performance and like it's not like a bad song, but like John just it doesn't get more classic than that.
I think it encapsulates what they wanted to sound like live.
Most definitely. Imagine like getting to see that live, like them during that time.
Yeah, fuck. That would be amazing. I mean, it'd be the best.
Yeah.
And the one of the shitty things is there's not a lot of great like recordings of it. I mean, obviously they recorded, these tracks, but there's not a lot of great live recordings, especially visually, from this time.
Yeah, that was just a weird thing that didn't get mapped out because they stopped touring halfway through their career, so they had so much clout or whatever after first 5 albums, so like 1966. So when anybody would be willing to throw as much money as they could to videotape a Beatles concert, they're not playing concerts anymore. Right. They're the biggest band in the world. Like, who wouldn't document that? There's like really good footage of like the Rolling Stones and stuff, but like the Beatles were done touring. Right. So
right.
I mean, just that Get Back documentary, that's like so special for Beatles fans.
Yeah.
To see, just because, yeah.
So rare. Well, are there any ones that are you think are like your favorite?
Yeah, I haven't even really. Well, so Misery, yeah.
Misery's
Yeah, love Misery. John and Paul singing like the same melody together. It's great. Their voices together are just. John has that like raspiness, and Paul has that sweetness, and I just like hearing their voices together, and the fact that they're singing the same melody. They're not really harmonizing with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how often that's happening in their songs. It definitely happens in like the singles, like "I Want to Hold Your Hand" or.
Where they're singing like the exact same note.
Yeah. Mm. Besides, like I think they go when they sing "Misery," it changes. Paul goes higher from it.
Yeah. Once they say the word misery, they harmonize. But
yeah, so
God, the harmonies were so locked in from the beginning.
Yeah, they were tight. I don't know, just whatever records they're listening to, because I don't know who would have taught them to like do that.
They're all good singers. I mean, just every single one of them's a good singer.
Yeah. Fun fact about that song, "Misery," track 2 on the Beatles' first album. George Martin plays piano. Do 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 do. I'm assuming that's the part he plays piano on, and it was the first Paul McCartney, John Lennon composition to be covered by another artist. Someone actually had asked them to write a song for them. They didn't like it, and the other person that was on that tour with them got it. And I listened to it, and it wasn't bad. It was also kind of like psychedelic.
Where is it? Like on YouTube?
Yeah. Oh, it's Spotify.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was. It's released on like a label. Someone owns it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Fun fact. Getting an early Lennon McCartney. Imagine like getting that like before they're famous. Like you don't even know what you have. Like like I'll play like this song by these guys, but like you don't even know what the fuck you have.
Yeah, I wonder what was going through their head. Like, did they listen to it and say like, "Holy shit, this is gonna change the world," or were they just like, "Oh, that was a good song"?
I've heard of one person like, well, obviously, I guess a lot of people had it like when they were making like a little bit stuff later, but have like a reaction that they're gonna change the world when they heard him, and that was Bob Dylan. He heard him. I read this somewhere, so who knows?
And that man was Jesus.
Yeah, right. But apparently, Bob Dylan was traveling or touring, and "I Want to Hold Your Hand" played on the radio, and apparently he got a like big buzz off of it and said like, "Oh, that's like the future of like rock and roll."
I could see it. I feel like "I Want to Hold Your Hand" was probably I mean, they were really heating up, and then "I Want to Hold Your Hand" was like the explosion of like Beatlemania.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite Beatles single. One of my favorite Beatles songs.
Yeah.
It's just in your.
I mean, it's basically perfect. Yeah. What album is that one on?
It's not. It's a standalone single. Released November. I'm not sure if it's also the day John F. Kennedy
22nd. No.
Yeah. So, also, how they're releasing these singles is strange. So, the first album came out end of March, and then, Love Me Do, not Love Me Do. Oh, I fucked this up.
It's okay. It's literally so fucking confusing.
Yeah, it might be "She Loves You," or what's the do "From Me to You"? Yeah, I think I don't know which one came out first, but one of them came out like a week or two after the first Beatles album, and it's not on the first Beatles album.
That's so weird.
Yeah, and then the other one of those two came out August, and then "I Want to Hold Your Hand" came out November. In the
November
UK.
29, 1963. Okay, so it's like all kind of around the same time, actually.
Yeah, that they're like releasing these albums. So that's, I don't know, like how they're thinking about it marketing wise.
Yeah. I don't know.
Especially albums
I don't
back
know
then.
What the logic was behind all of this.
They weren't albums. They were like thought of just like a bunch of singles on an album. Like albums weren't like, a big concept.
Yeah. The record industry worked so differently back then because it's like, it's off the heels of like radio.
Yeah. What is even off the heels of like now?
streaming services. I guess.
people say TikTok, but I don't even understand if it's like. Can you even hear a whole song on TikTok, or is it like
no?
30
But like
seconds?
all the songs that like become viral on TikTok, like are like Spotify hits, like almost immediately. I guess it makes people's careers.
Yeah,
But it's more of a specific type of music. I mean, I think like you see it a lot with like pop and like rap.
Yeah, and it's also like once they started to count like so many thousands of streams equals like a one like iTunes purchase. I don't know what
One
means
hit,
what.
yeah.
Yeah.
The equivalent, the ratios. Yeah.
It's all over the place.
Yeah, but one thing about I Want to Hold Your Hand that I like since we're on this is I just coming from a drummer perspective again, like I love the fills. Do 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 do. I mean, just with the way he hits the snare and the tom at the same time, but like kind of does a musical like walk down on the toms is it's iconic, and it really helps with kind of that the fullness of the song and the fullness of the early Beatles. I think like Ringo added a huge part of that.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to hear like what like a studio drummer drum all those songs, and to hear like
It
what
would
they would
be.
have.
Like if they just had no recollection of like what Ringo played.
Yeah.
Like they never heard it. They just like went in the studio and like recorded what they thought like the drums should sound like.
I think it would be more boring maybe. I don't know.
I don't know what it would be. And
Ringo's like it obviously wouldn't be like what Ringo does, because he's just like crazy almost.
Right. It's also context of the time, like too, because like if you were to do that today, like somebody would probably go in there and do something completely different than what the average drummer would do in the 60s.
Someone would try to like just put Dilla type drums over every Beatles song.
Lo-fi.
That would just be the
hip-hop
answer to everything.
Beats. Yeah. But yeah, that's a good one.
But yeah, there's a couple of like songs on here that I don't like. Maybe usually in most Beatles albums, the songs that Ringo sings,
yeah, those ones can be rough.
just like kind of corny.
Yeah. Like he has a good voice, but yeah, they can be corny, or they can just be kind of like one dimensional, I think.
Yeah. I mean, but also all the good songs. There's so much I could say. Like Ask Me Why, fantastic ballad.
Oh yeah,
Fantastic ballad.
There's a Place.
Yeah.
Great vocals.
Great vocals, very fiery. It gets, right to the point.
Mm-hmm. Going back to that George Martin putting what he thought were the best songs on the front and the back. There's a Place is the second to last song.
Yeah, that's one. Like, I don't know why. When you see people cover song, like it never gets covered. It seems so easy to play.
No, it's so fucking hard.
And it's
I mean, like,
so like catchy and like do 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 do. Yeah.
I felt like when we tried to play There's a Place, like for me personally, like I couldn't hit those vocals. Like they were fucking hard.
Oh yeah, but also you're not a singer.
Yeah, but
you're
just
being forced
even
to by like gunpoint.
Yes,
to like sing.
Yeah, exactly. That made it much harder. Yeah, that made it much worse. But like, even a singer, I think, would have trouble hitting some of those notes, especially if they're not like a high singer, because like a lot of these early Beatles songs too are really high in the vocal range because they're young. They're just so young that they have like higher voices than later in their career, and it makes it hard for the typical like rock cover band to pull off, I feel like. And it would be badass to see it more though.
Yeah, especially because they kind of did it all. John Lennon and Paul McCartney could both play piano and guitar and sing, and had like they knew how to put those vocals together very well.
Yeah.
So that's very few musicians kind of take up all of those things, and then also could write songs.
Mm-hmm.
That's it's kind of insane that they all took up all of that. They're like, okay, we're gonna all be the songwriters and singers and work well together, but also be competitive.
Well, I would say that Paul and John mostly, especially in the beginning, it was mostly just them.
Yeah.
I guess that's another thing about this album and early Beatles in general is it's very Paul and John focused, I think, in a way that later isn't. I think George comes into the picture a little bit more. Ringo always kind of stays in the back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it kind of goes back to, I know that when the Beatles first started, George kind of went with whatever Paul and John kind of had, like, because they were more like type A personalities, and he kind of just like absorbed everything, you know, and just, I mean, what he adds on it is fucking great, but he doesn't really have that like frontman status yet.
Yeah, that makes sense because he's the youngest, so you know, he'd probably be a bit more quiet and not as you know.
Yeah, and also I think like a lot of his skills, like he was definitely talented from the very beginning, and maybe it was just that they didn't give him as much of a chance, but I feel like a lot of his skills were actually learned. Like that's kind of just my like take on it, is maybe a lot of his skills were learned from watching George Martin, you know, Paul, John, and whatever other musicians they came in to encounter, you know, Bob Dylan, and then when you hear like, you know,
Ravi Shankar. Yeah,
and then when you hear like George Harrison's solo album, what is it? All Things Must Pass.
Yes.
Right? You can really hear this kind of like crazy culmination of everything he's learned from being observant all of those years.
Even in the like his later Beatles songs were some of the bigger ones of the time, like Abbey Road, something.
Yeah, something. Yeah, Here Comes the Sun.
Oh yeah,
That's probably arguably one of the biggest Beatles songs
ever. Yeah.
Yeah. Here Comes the Sun and Hey Jude probably.
Yeah. So he definitely came into his own. Yeah, had the best teachers, you know, around. So yeah, that's just the first album. Like, we're gonna have to get started on the second album.
Yeah. Why don't we save it for next time?
Today we're talking with the Beatles, which is the second Beatles album.
Yep.
Released 22nd of November 1963, like we mentioned in the first part of the episode, the day JFK was killed.
Odd. But yes.
Yeah. No, never mind.
There's a connection. There always is.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
Well,
because at that point we could talk about that all day. The podcast would change from a music podcast to connections that between JFK's assassination and whatever.
Yeah, let's just take this the Alex Jones way. Let's just
don't say Alex Jones' name, please. Please don't say his name on this. We don't want.
He's fucked.
That's the worst. Yeah, he is.
He's fucked.
He is, and like
rightfully so.
His name is like poison. So the fact that we would start talking about him here,
I mean, it's interesting.
As we discuss the second Beatles album with the Beatles, released November 22nd, 1963, the day JFK got assassinated. All right, no. Okay. So, what do you think's like the biggest differences between the first and second album? What do you feel? What do you hear?
I say, well, this one has like obviously like a lot more covers on it. I would say it's got a lot less originals.
I don't know.
No,
I don't know. When you put them side by side, I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I think the first one had a lot more originals on it, and then this one has like a lot more covers. This one seems like more, I don't know, just the fact that it has covers makes it hard to analyze both, because like a lot of it's just you know, their taste at the time. So it's not really like comparing like two original like Beatles albums. It's not like comparing like Revolver to like the White Album.
Yeah. Well, I guess you could kind of evenly match it since they both have them.
Yeah.
It'd be weird if you compared like this album to the White Album or something.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Well, I would say like in comparison of their first two albums, like both of them sound pretty similar, I would say. And they kind of sound like a continuation of each other. There's not like an abrupt like stop and an end, but like what do you think?
I think the sound actually is very, very different.
Okay.
In the atmosphere. I'm not sure. Is it louder, more compressed? The first one comes off smoother. to me, and I don't know. I hear a lot more overdub vocals. So like for the first song, what it won't be long.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear the like John Lennon and like overdub vocals, even to like there's differences in the takes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's weird how it lines up. And I think there's maybe even a couple times on this album, maybe one on this album, one on the last album, where they say different words while singing the same part.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what I don't know if it's louder, more compressed. They were obviously probably just trying stuff.
I kind
It
of get
doesn't
what you're
seem as
saying. I
smooth.
mean, like what I noticed from this album is like when it comes to Ringo's drumming, is he uses a lot more open hi-hats and like it's a lot more sloshy, and a lot of the songs are swung anyways, so it might give it more of like an open feel or like a more of like a loudness factor. Also, like some of the vocals are more straining rather than like those like smooth harmonies that you might hear like on the first one.
Yeah, they really get loud with
Yeah.
it.
It's very rock and roll for sure.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Might be more fun to start with the songs that we don't like on the album.
Sure.
There's a few of those. There's a few on the first one. Off the top of my head, the ones, I guess, because this is going to be in the same episode. The ones that I don't care for on the first album.
Hold on, he's got to flip through his literal paper that he wrote with pencil.
Boys, Ringo, a Ringo song. It's probably a cover. I don't know who wrote it, but it's kind of a dud.
Yeah. What about that song don't you like?
It's kind of just comes off kind of goofy.
Some of his songs do.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed more like they were trying to market them in those early days, like very much like a boy band, and it kind of seemed like, oh, like we need like Ringo needs a song, because Ringo had a lot of fans. They want Ringo to sing a song, so they need to give him something. I think even on the second album, what's on with the Beatles, I Want to Be Your Man.
Yeah.
The Rolling Stones, the one they wrote for the Rolling Stones.
Yes.
Yeah, John Lennon said like, well, there's only two versions of the songs, the Rolling Stones, and then Ringo's, so you could tell that we didn't think much of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just like, it just seemed like those songs,
They're
especially
like
in
throwaway.
Yeah, exactly.
Almost. Interesting that they released them still.
Yeah, but honestly, looking through the track list of like the first album, even the covers and stuff, even the ones I don't like as much, like maybe Chains or something, I do like all these songs a lot. And
Like Chains.
yeah, but in the second one, like the closer, what is it, Money?
Yeah.
Yeah,
The cover. Well, they're mostly all covers, but yeah, that one's a pretty cover of a pretty big song.
Yeah, let's see. So I just have the track list right now. Yeah, so for With the Beatles, say banger, 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 banger. Little Child sucks. Till There Was You Good. Mr. Postman, good cover.
Yeah. I like that.
Roll Over Beethoven.
I don't like that
Boring.
song that much.
I Want to Be Your Man. Annoying and goofy. And then dang, there's a lot of songs. There's 14 songs on this album.
Right. Really? But then again, it goes back to that thing we were talking about before, where it like has so many 14 songs, but it's like 30 minutes.
Yeah, they get a lot
2
done.
minutes. Yeah. 2-minute average.
Yeah, so this, I always like kind of iffy with this album, because that Beatles thing where with headphones, how it doesn't work.
Mm-hmm.
I always very much heard that on this album, where like the
Okay.
vocals are in like
So you're talking about where it's heavily like panned, right? So where like
yeah.
the guitar might be like in the right ear and the vocals might be like in the left ear.
And it's like not pleasant. I feel like
Yeah,
if there's any of that
heavily
on the
panned.
first album, it's not as noticeable or abrupt. But yeah, I very much notice it on this recording. But I was listening to this in a mono version not long ago, and it was my favorite experience hearing the album. Those early ones were made to hear in mono, so that probably just had a lot to do with it.
Where do you like find the mono version?
So, unless there's like certain, because there's like re-releases, so people get like purists like might say you need to get like a record from the 60s. They have these CD releases that you could previously only get buying like a package,
Yeah.
like the US package, probably.
And then like one of the
$100.
CDs is like the mono version.
I think it gives you the US releases of all the albums in mono, maybe. I could be wrong.
Okay.
But recently they finally put that up on streaming.
Oh, really?
But it's annoying because it's all the US releases in order, but it'll have the stereo version of the album and then the mono version right after, and then all of those are just put in one giant like compilation.
Oh, is it like the anthology series?
It is not. It is separate. The anthology, yeah, it's more of like behind the scenes, like outtakes and stuff.
Okay.
On that in different versions, I guess. But this is just I think it's called the US Beatles or some bullshit, whatever.
Okay.
However they were marketed in the US, it's just like a CD version. So you have to take all the songs from that, all the mono ones, and then make playlists of your own albums.
Yeah, that's what you did, right? So
It's
you just
annoying. Yeah.
made playlists creating basically the album
Yes.
in mono.
Which, if you're a fan of the Beatles, it's fun. It's worth it.
Yeah.
I want to hear the mono versions. There's something very raw. Well, I like listening to all sorts of versions of the songs, but the mono one specifically because that's what the Beatles sounded like when they were coming out. That's why they were famous.
Right.
Let's hear
it just sounds like the way it was intended to be heard.
Yeah, let's hear it, Capitol. Put those out.
Yeah.
We put those out as the official ones because you
Right. Just pull the trigger. Just
don't make me look for it.
yeah, just remaster it and just make it mono. I agree with that.
People were discovering the Beatles for the first time right now and throwing them on, and they only have one headphone on, and it's the weirdest fucking shit.
Yeah, the last plane ride I was on, I was listening to this album in preparation for the podcast, and I had to take one earphone out, and I just couldn't. I couldn't listen to it anymore. I'm sure many people have that same experience. So I feel for you out there.
You had to take one earphone out?
Yeah, for some sort of reason, either Crystal was talking to me or somebody was talking to me, and I took my earphone out, and then I couldn't. I couldn't listen to the album anymore.
I thought you meant it was so crazy sounding you couldn't have two headphones on while listening. You just had to take one out.
I couldn't bear it. Yeah, no, that wasn't it. But yeah, overall this album, I was thinking about this album, and yeah, like I said, the way it's played is very rock and roll. I think in terms of the energy that the Beatles are putting out there, sounds like it was made to be played live, for sure. And they just wanted to be the loudest freaking band in the room. And we were watching that early concert right now, just a couple clips of it, and you could just tell that it was just loud as hell. That they were just playing these songs on 10, and that's what they wanted to do with this batch of songs.
Yeah, they seem to be always hitting their instruments really hard.
Yeah.
Loud, playing really loud.
Part of that I'm sure is the amplification, right? Because at that time it wasn't amplification wasn't where it is today, so you really had to just crank your amp up, and that was just what you had.
Yeah. And then they just have like this a lot of energy. Even like when they sing, there's this like I don't know, energy you feel with them. Like they're almost having fun. They have like this subtle sound. It's never too big in their sound, but of country music.
That's interesting, because the first thing I get from this one is like Motown.
Well,
I don't really
most
get
definitely
country
with
as much.
It's very subtle in their. It's more, I'd say, in their vocals and like the way they sing. It's they're sounding like it's like American harmonization, but they're British, so they're not like doing it like crazy. More so like a song like on the first album, "Love Me Do," or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they have that American influence, and it just blends so well with like whatever British like there's like British personality that they have in their music, and it's what makes them like so unique. It's like a weird blend with all the American stuff they're being influenced by.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you can really hear it when they sing, and they're like the perfect epitome of that British band where they have these like really heavy ass like Liverpool accents, and then they're like, "Oh, we're gonna play this song." My British accent's terrible, but they're like, "Oh, we're gonna play this song," and then as soon as they go into the song, like it's just straight like American vocals. It's crazy. Like it sounds like two different people. It's so weird.
Yeah. And they kind of continue just bringing like those like other elements like throughout their career, whatever they learn, with like the Indian influence, Ravi Shankar and George Harrison.
Yeah, but they don't start singing in like Indian accents.
Oh, those are the Beatles tapes we haven't heard yet. They're gonna go back for them.
Unreleased Indian vocal
dub.
I mean, the closest thing would be like George's like solo stuff. He was like definitely singing some mantras on there.
Yeah.
But he still did it in like his way. But yeah, another thing I noticed about this album is that I feel like if this album were to come out today, like it wouldn't even exist. I feel like if this was made today, it would be a playlist of, what they're listening to. Like Radiohead, like every time that they release an album, they release like one or two playlists on Spotify, kind of showing where their head was at the time. And I feel like this album feels like that to me. It sounds like what they were listening to at the time, and they wanted to make odes to what they were listening to and maybe lift the original artist. I'm not sure. Maybe they just liked it. But anyways, it feels like hand-selected cover songs.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the process was for them and the cover tunes specifically on this album. I don't know if it was like just a similar case of what they did on the first one where, they were performing their live act.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, that's interesting. I know it was popular for people to cover like Motown songs and other people's songs on their albums, and it wasn't. You could just do it. You didn't really need to get it approved or any type of licensing.
Yeah.
So I know that was popular. The original songs. I mean, there's some kind of like. There's All My Loving.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's the first song they played on Ed Sullivan.
Yeah.
I forget how many people watched. Like 70 million. People. One of my favorite Beatles songs of all times. That's on here. All I've Got to Do, fantastic ballad.
Mm-hmm.
I think great. John Lennon composed.
Yeah, the harmonies on the chorus really stuck out to me. That they're like almost like dissonant. They get like dissonant at the end. That song really impresses me in terms of harmonies.
All I've Got to Do.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of my favorite songs, I think, by the Beatles.
Yeah, it's very short. Everything sounds really good. Paul and John, that All I Got to them harmonizing that. It's just it's like everything there is to like about the Beatles, basically.
Mm-hmm. And it's got that sick Ringo beat where he's just like,
yes, it's
like he's not even hitting the snare yet, and then when he brings the snare in, it just really adds that like emphasis that is pro. That's a pro drummer move.
Probably a perfect example of like a Beatles song, which isn't a hit, but it's great. I mean, you could show that song to anybody. I don't know why. Like, there would be no reason not to like it. It just sounds like so good. Everything sounds so good.
Would you classify that song not as a hit? I say that's like a pretty big Beatles hit. I mean, they have so many good songs that it's not like even probably in the top 15.
Yeah, people say,
but it's
like
still
every
like
song is a hit
song.
about the Beatles. I don't know.
Not true.
I'm basing it off
But
of
most.
like everything on the number 1 CD is a hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is not on that.
That's an interesting one because like everything on the number
and
one
that's like
CD,
30 songs. So
yeah, but there's a lot of songs that aren't on that number 1 CD that should be, that just were not number 1 singles.
You know what? What's a bigger compilation? Those like ones that are like red and blue. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, where they have just like all of their singles.
Yeah, I don't know if that's on that. If it's not on, then certified not hit in my book. But
I don't see it because it's one of the strongest songs. Like I would say, like if you took every Beatles album and you took like the strongest like 3 songs on them and called them like Beatles hits, this would make it because it's in the top 3 of like this album for sure.
That's interesting. I mean, that's not wrong. I think it's
because that's how it
one
came
of the
out.
strongest ones on the album. Yeah, I mean, if you know the Beatles, you know this song probably.
Mm-hmm.
What would the biggest song be on this album? All My Loving?
Yeah, definitely. I would say 100%.
The covers they do are kind of popular recordings. I never liked that though.
Some of them
like
are
Money and Roll Over Beethoven. Don't really care for those two, but they seem like when people talk about the Beatles in that time, or like in documentaries, they'll like play clips of them playing that. And it's like there's better songs on the albums. There's original songs on the album.
Yeah.
I don't get like why those are so popular.
Yeah, I think Roll Over Beethoven specifically, I mean, Chuck Berry is the GOAT, but like in terms of this album, I think it just shows that the Beatles were really into like rock and roll at this time. Like they were into this early rock and roll, this blues style.
Have you ever seen that video of Chuck Berry having a hooker fart in his face?
No.
You never seen this?
No, but now I gotta watch it.
Yeah.
Have you seen that one video of Chuck Berry and like John Lennon like playing on stage, and then Yoko starts like singing all this, screaming all this random shit, and he just like makes a face like, what the fuck?
That video is so fucking weird.
Yeah.
Like even for the time,
like, who is this lady?
That's like to let somebody just do that like on stage.
Yeah. We should eventually do like a John and Yoko podcast where we just go into like everything about it and just talk about it.
We'll just end up probably talking more about John Lennon and all his goodness.
Yeah, true. They have it. There's an interesting documentary on Netflix, anyways, called John and Yoko, and it's really good. Goes into their lives, especially towards the end of his life, and yeah. She said they claim that she wrote Imagine.
Oh, like she
wrote the lyrics.
That she was speaking it, and he put a song to it.
I don't know exactly how it happened, but she's the credits. I have to look into it more, but the documentary implied that she wrote that song, and then he put music to it, but she wrote the lyrics or the concept. And like most of the structure of the verses and choruses.
It's funny because with them, like if somebody were to claim to write like a song and like even like okay, have it, they're still like, it doesn't like take anything away from them almost, because they just have a billion other songs. Like, I don't know if that story's true or not. Probably not. I don't know.
That's what the documentary said. I mean, I don't know.
That's never been my favorite song by him of his solo career. And
I mean, yeah, it's not the best sounding song, but it's just like iconic. It's just like an iconic thing.
it's kind of hippy dippy bullshit.
It's
iconic. I like the song.
I feel like
I'm talking shit, but
to go into the hippy dippy bullshit, I have a little bit of sympathy towards that, because I feel like that song did like change a lot of minds, like at the time. it felt good. Like people were like,
we should stay home for this pandemic.
Yeah. We should sing it on TikTok.
They're like, yeah.
Didn't they fucking do that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
Yeah.
You're saying you changed the minds, and that's how. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. That was crazy.
No, but back then, people had hope about being anti-government or whatever.
Yeah, anti-religion or whatever. Anyways, so I want to go back. I want to go like a little bit chronologically, so that way we can keep, that way people listening can like keep up. But like the first song, "It Won't Be Long." Do you think that they thought that was going to be the big single of the album?
No.
I wonder why it's first then. It was an interesting song to start with.
Yeah.
I feel like it was a middle song.
It's kind of fiery. So, and also when it comes to placement of songs on albums, people choose like all sorts of songs for all sorts of reasons to like open up their album. I used to like try to think of like this and like what's a good opener song for an album, and then on like some of my favorite albums, it's just like different. They'll put the best song fifth, they'll put the best song last, they'll put the best song second.
Yeah, but also when they make the order, they don't know what the best song is. That just comes out later.
Yeah,
when people react to it.
Yeah, well, as far as like released as a single, I don't know which of these songs on this album. I don't know if any of them were released as singles. They probably were in like certain countries, depending on like how they wanted to market the Beatles there, the record companies.
Mm-hmm.
But were any of these off-album singles? I don't think so.
I have no clue.
Yeah, but It Won't Be Long. It's, I like it. I don't think it's the best Beatles song. It is a fiery, we won't be long, yeah.
I like the outro.
They're all in your face. All the Beatles are screaming, yeah.
Right.
And let's get this album started.
It does give a good idea and like summary of like what you're gonna hear. I think this song.
Yeah.
It's got the loud vocals, got the big drums, got the cool like little riffs and everything. So it's a good summary of what's to come.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, you get a taste of like the overall feel of the album for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, like track 2 is what I bet on everybody in the room, like not thinking that it's the best song on the album, but it's like what they're all betting is like, oh, this is like a good one. Because there's no reason for track 2 not to be a good one. Because if track 2 is not good on your album, like what are you even doing? Because the first song, you could either, Metallica has Enter Sandman as track 1 on the Black album.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes a lot of people will do as track 1, like, it won't even be like a song. It'll be like an intro type song where you're like doing like a big, like, overall, like, entrance to like what the album is going to be. And it's not necessarily a tune. But then come track 2, what are you going to do that again? Is it going to be like an interlude? Like you're in the album, we're listening to songs.
It's like the curtain is opened.
Yes.
You have everyone's attention. Like it's time to play something good.
This is an album. This is music. You have to give me a good song right now. So, yeah. So as far as like if they thought that was going to be a big single, I wouldn't think so. But who knows what they were thinking.
Any final thoughts on this song?
Overdub vocals, very noticeable. I wasn't that into it until I heard it in mono. I like the song.
That's cool.
I just wrote, my only note was fiery start. That's what I put.
That's funny because I wrote down that this song has a really cool outro. So you're like the beginning, I'm like the end. But yeah, I just love the way it ends. It's very classic. Bum, 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 bum.
To you.
Yeah. Cool ending, you know. Not done a lot these days.
Yeah, I'm into it. I dig it. It gets, it's not a skip at all for me.
Yeah, and then we talked about All I Gotta Do quite a lot. All My Loving.
My Loving, I'll
yeah.
just say one of my favorite Beatles songs. Start right, close, vocals right away. It just gets going.
Mm-hmm.
No time for bullshit. Basically, the song that everybody first saw the Beatles, perform on Ed Sullivan. So that kind of introduced. I mean, people. I Want to Hold Your Hand was number one, but as far as like seeing them like on TV, like that kind of event, people talk almost too much about that fucking Ed Sullivan show. But
I mean,
it's cool.
Yeah.
I like the live versions of the songs they played on that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the Ed Sullivan show kind of goes into that iconic category of like, imagine, Hey Jude, Ed Sullivan show. There's just like things that in Beatles lore that just like, it's hard to judge them. They might almost seem overrated if you're a fan, but it's like, those were just such cultural moments, so that's why it sticks with everybody.
Yeah, I think the only annoying thing is that when I hear, I don't know, I guess the way it was described, but like, just like, show it to me. I want to watch it. It's good.
Someone's going to cut that. Show it to me. I want to watch it.
Yeah. But yeah. And plus there's a lot of live versions of this song, whether it's on like the BBC like compilation albums, Live 1, Live 2, or I think it's on the Hollywood Bowl one as well. I enjoy listening to them all. I've heard them all, way too much. Great tune.
Mm-hmm.
Great tune. We'll move on.
Yeah, Don't Bother Me. Cool ass song. One that just you don't really hear about a lot.
This is definitely an underrated one. Mm-hmm. It makes its way into the movie A Hard Day's Night though, if I remember correctly.
Oh, that's cool. I've actually never seen that movie.
Yeah, I mean it's worth seeing. Kind of corny, like anything else. The Beatles, I like their music, so when they're acting and stuff, it's like okay, like
yeah,
whatever. But
it's like your favorite actor releasing an album.
It's like going to see Johnny Depp like play guitar with Jeff Beck. He did a show with Jeff Beck like last week.
Oh yeah, every time I watch videos of him playing guitar, I'm just like, dude, just not into it. He always sounds like he just snorted like a fat line right before he started playing.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah, because that's exactly what he did.
Yeah, it's because like you can't. He's not like fooling anybody, but it's kind of interesting. He goes to a venue to watch Johnny Depp play with like other rock stars.
Yeah, man, he's super multifaceted. Rock star, actor, legal person. Case study.
Yeah. Chooser of women who shit in beds.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Chooser of insane women. Yeah, so Don't Bother Me. I one thing I like is you pointed out that George is the one that basically wrote this song, right? And he kind of spearheaded this song.
Yes. So basically whoever's singing lead on the song is like it's their song for the most part.
Yeah.
Of the Beatles, except for the Ringo songs. Either covers or John and Paul wrote it.
That makes sense. Yeah, so one thing that sticks out, like, I mean, a lot of stuff about George is like underrated, and this kind of just goes in that category. But like one thing that I really noticed on this song was like the way he writes his verse phrasing and chorus phrasing. Really matches what he's playing on guitar like so tastefully. like it's almost like some words that he says are like emphasized by the riff that he's playing. Like he weaves together riffs and vocal lines so masterfully that I think that doesn't get pointed out enough. When you hear it, you're just like, oh, that sounds fucking good. But like, if you hear it, like, why does it sound good? To me, it's because like the way that the guitar and the vocals are like blending and like emphasizing is amazing.
Yeah, it comes off seamless. The song plays very well as far as just like a tune to put on. Oh, you like earworm.
What? Random.
It's just like that's what people say, right? An earworm.
I've never heard that before. I have no fucking idea what you're talking about. What the hell is an earworm? It sounds not good.
That's how I feel about this whole album.
This album gives me earworms. Well, interesting.
Yeah, all right. But tapeworm. This album gave me a tapeworm. No. Yeah, the guitar and it all just flows like so well. It sounds it's so strange considering they've never been in America. But the song like almost sounds like out of California.
Yeah.
That's I'm sure what it was influenced by, and then plus with this tremolo, like surfy.
Yeah, it's got surf. Yeah, it definitely
surfy.
has surf vibes, 60s vibes.
Yeah, which is interesting, like to think because this is still early '60s.
Yeah,
before they broke. So the fact that they were just that influenced.
They just listen to a shit ton of music, right? Like you hear Motown influences, you hear surf influences, you hear R&B influences, you hear freaking French influences with some Paul McCartney stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, it all comes down to just like just a great wealth of knowledge of music, and then not only that, but being able to execute it. I think this is one of those that kind of shows that.
All right. Then Little Child, Whack, I Always Skip.
Yeah.
One of the worst Beatles songs.
Mm-hmm.
And then Till There Was You, cover, classic recording. Paul
Good
McCartney's
harmonies.
vocals are perfect. I used to just I was like amazed when hearing this song. I couldn't. It's one of those songs where I'm listening and I can't I don't know why not everybody around me listens to this song.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so good. He sings so well. The guitar solos amazing.
Yeah. I was getting this song mixed up with a different one, but Till There Was You that one's just the one that's like Paul by himself.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
They also play that on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Really? I didn't know that. I actually also have never watched that. I haven't seen a lot of Beatles video. I've just heard them a lot.
It's not on YouTube, it's on Vimeo.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Hipster.
Yeah. But I think they play 4 songs. It's like a variety show, so they would have different performers and stuff.
It is. This is an interesting one to play, because I think of it more. I think of the vibes being more in a garden or something. I don't think of it as being in a, auditorium with screaming fans. But
yeah, it's weird. They do scream during it, and it's shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's just not the vibe, but that's really cool. This song is amazing. This is when I was looking into this song. This is the only Broadway song the Beatles ever recorded.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's
That'd
from
be a
Broadway
Paul
musical.
song because Paul he gets kind of that outside, show tune beep toot toot toot.
Yeah,
he's kind of more into that sort of music.
Yeah,
but yeah, great recording, great song, great performance.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Just fantastic lyrics. He didn't write the lyrics, but the original writer, the name eludes me right now, but I guess this is from the musical Music Man. Just great lyrics.
That's from the musical Music Man?
Mm-hmm.
Was there another song on this that was from that musical?
No, because this is the only Broadway song they ever recorded.
Yeah, you just said. Are those your notes?
Yeah.
I was wondering. I was like, what are you reading this off of?
Just texting people.
But yeah,
Mr.
Yeah.
Postman.
Another cover.
Yeah.
Second cover of the album, I think.
Just a good song. I mean, just the original is a great song. Still super famous.
Yeah.
Probably even more famous than the Beatles cover.
Yeah, people usually, I would say, probably listen to that one. But the Beatles version is good too.
Yeah, it's good.
John Lennon sings really great on it.
Great. Drums, great. A lot of the Motown stuff too, like Ringo, it goes with the vibe of what we were talking about, where they really like dig into that loud kind of aggressiveness, which isn't really super present in Motown, but like the Beatles bring it to this album. I think that's the one way that they kind of differentiate from like the original Motown recordings.
Yeah, they have, it's like their version of stuff.
Yeah, it's like super sloshy and like rock.
Sloshy. Yes. And then there's another cover right after that. Roll Over Beethoven. I wrote Meh.
Yeah.
Which is what I think of the,
Yeah,
145.
we kind of mentioned it before. Not really the favorite on this one.
Yeah, I guess, he probably did roll over.
Maybe.
Yeah, if you
when they recorded the song.
Yeah, or the Chuck Berry version.
Yeah, I've never heard the Chuck Berry version,
and
I won't.
No, you'll probably watch the video of the hooker farting in it.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up first.
I heard about that like on a radio show.
He's pretty crazy, dude. That would be an interesting episode.
Chuck Berry.
A Chuck Berry episode.
My grandparents got engaged at a Chuck Berry concert in like the 60s.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. Anyway, so yeah, roll over Beethoven, George singing. Just you've heard it. You probably don't care about it anyway. Hold Me Tight. Paul, he is great.
Mm-hmm.
He writes great songs. Very catchy.
Love the chorus on this one.
Yeah, I like how he moves the songs along.
Yeah, this one moves weird.
Yeah,
but
and
it works.
I like it. Yeah. It just kind of shows how original the Beatles are. They're not really doing things by like regular format. They're feeling things out, especially him and his tunes. Very catchy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great one. I don't have much to say other than it's a good song.
Yeah. Next.
You Really Got a Hold on Me. That's the one I have next. I'm pretty sure that's the next one.
Great
Smokey
cover.
Robinson song.
Yeah, Smokey Robinson. Another one like Mr. Postman.
Yeah, it's like
great original, but then also the Beatles do a good cover of it as well.
Yeah, totally. They both like hold their own weight,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then another thing about You Really Gotta Hold on Me. I haven't compared the two side by side, like the original and the cover, but I like the fills on it. Some great fills.
Yeah, during those breaks, especially.
Yeah, during the breaks. Super tasteful.
Yeah, just like the elements of the Beatles, they have so much personality, and they let it show on all of the songs. Yeah, just one of my, great band.
Yeah.
Great band.
All right, so I Want to Be Your Man. Stop me if I say one of the wrong, like if I say the wrong order of songs, because I don't know if I wrote everyone down.
That's right.
Okay. I had something pulled up here, the Wikipedia, because I wanted to just read it like really quick. So, I Want to Be Your Man is a Lennon-McCartney penned song, first recorded and released as a single by the Rolling Stones, and then recorded by the Beatles. So they wrote it, they gave it to the Rolling Stones, then the Rolling Stones released it as a single, then the Beatles decided to put it on their album. So I wonder what those conversations were like. Were the Rolling Stones cool with it? Were they like...
Oh, I'm sure.
Were they like, what the hell? Like, I thought you gave that song to us.
I don't know if they're famous yet, the Rolling Stones. But also...
Interesting.
people were just covering songs all the time on each other's albums.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's their song. I doubt they thought it was a big deal.
That's true.
They didn't really like it that much. They gave it to Ringo to sing.
Yeah.
I usually skip. I don't really listen to this.
So the song was primarily written by Paul McCartney and finished by John Lennon and McCartney in the corner of a Richmond club while Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were talking. That is the lore. But yeah, not my favorite one.
Yeah.
Not horrible.
A lot of
It's not-
energy. Yeah, it's not the worst. Yeah. The next, Devil in Your Heart, sung by George Harrison.
Yeah.
I really like it. I really like the tune. I really like his performance.
Yeah, great cover.
Yeah.
The original one isn't that famous. This is one where it's not like a super famous original song. But yeah, just good lyrics on this one too.
Yeah, very catchy. Earworm again, yeah.
Ear AIDS.
Ear COVID. You get your booster shot for the earworm. Anyway.
Okay. Yeah, not a second time.
John Lennon composed. I really love the way it moves. I guess similar to like the Paul McCartney composed songs. I guess them as a band in general, they kind of like, they're not going through these ups and downs of the, pop structure. They just kind of, it to me, not so much random, but like good part, and it just kind of keeps moving. It won't even be like that connected to each other, like the chords. It's kind of like random. That's why they have like random chord changes and stuff, and it's like not all in the same key. It's pretty cool.
I don't know how. I mean, I guess it was different for every song, but like maybe it's like that they wrote all of the lyrics and then like kind of smushed a structure together to kind of match the lyrics or something of the sort. It definitely wasn't written in like an A B sort of way. It was like, hey, I have these lines and like I want it to go like this way, and they're like, oh, okay, well, we can play these chords under it, and we can move it this way. So it was more fluid than like your run of the mill pop or like Motown song would have been written structure wise.
Yeah, I would like to hear. I mean, I'm sure they just don't have it because this is early in the Beatles' career. But like the demo versions or like the songwriting tapes, of these songs.
Mm-hmm.
From what I've heard, it's just they kind of just mumble shit while playing chords.
Yeah,
and then try to come up with words that just fit. Like I think yesterday was scrambled eggs.
That's
until he was able to write it. It like took like a year or something.
Right. That's cool.
Yeah.
The piano was played by George Martin. That's a cool thing about this song.
Oh,
It's got a sick piano part played by George Martin.
yeah. This is also this fun fact: Kurt Cobain's one of his favorite albums of all time.
That's interesting.
Yeah. There's some like
He loves the Beatles though, so I can see that.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, there's some list that I think they wrote by hand of like just like albums they like.
Who, Nirvana?
Yeah, Nirvana.
Oh.
Yeah, this was on it. But yeah, just that song. People say like it gives off like even like a Nirvana like type vibe, which I could see.
I can see that.
I think it's like similar chords to About a Girl.
And I'm sure he was
Maybe
heavily
names.
influenced by it. So
Yeah, but it's just it's a good tune, super catchy. John Lennon sounds great on it.
yeah,
Another one of those songs that underrated. There's a lot of underrated songs on this album.
super underrated tracks on this album. Yeah. Other than All My Lovin', it's kind of like the other ones are kind of a little bit low key. And All I've Got to Do. But anyways,
Yeah, All My Loving isn't on that whatever greatest hits number ones.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they're just ones that hit number one at the time, but like it's not their like greatest hits. It's just like you can't make a greatest hits of Beatles because like it's just too long.
You might as well just listen to it all.
Yeah.
I'm surprised more people. I mean, they've been, they've managed to stay big forever, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, they're timeless. And then just great swing by Ringo. I knew I keep bringing Ringo up, but I would say we're coming towards the end of this album here, and like I would say that my MVP for the album is actually Ringo.
Okay, that's interesting.
Maybe it goes with the underrated vibes of like the whole album, but like I think that he sets the tone and executes it like so perfectly for what they wanted the vibe to be. And like a lot of it has to do with like Ringo's like big drums. I think if a different drummer played it, he wouldn't have played it that same loud style, that same way, and it like certain songs that are like massive would have sounded weird. Like, so I would say he's the MVP on this one actually.
Yeah, he definitely has a big presence. I don't know if I would consider him the MVP.
Who would you consider the MVP?
The songwriters.
You can only pick one.
John and Paul.
That's two people.
John Lennon comes in pretty hot. Just like he has a lot of them that he sings. But I mean, All My Lovin' and Till There Was You. I mean, classic.
Yeah.
And then Hold Me Tight, another one of my like personal favorites. So, yeah, maybe Paul. And then even on All I've Got to Do, when Paul comes in harmonizing with John, it's just takes that shit to another level. That's why you fucking listen to the Beatles right there. Like, if you don't like that song, then like you will not like the Beatles. And it would be insane not to like that just because they sound so good singing it.
Yeah, I agree.
I have very strong feelings about the Beatles.
You have very strong feelings for the Beatles, it sounds like.
Yeah, for the Beatles.
Okay, last song's Money. The beginning of the song just sounds really out of tune, and I don't know why. Like, I'm pretty sure like one of the guitars was like out of tune. I don't know if it was like intentional.
Sound like a piano.
Sounds weird. Yeah.
Maybe the strings are out of tune on the piano.
Yeah, some
I don't
shit.
know.
I don't know. It just sounds a little off.
I don't really like this song.
It's just.
Maybe I just heard it too much when I was a kid. I don't like when the Beatles played it. I really don't like listen to it.
That's what I want. Yeah, just that kind of. It's a little much.
It's very Motown. It's classic. But I mean,
I like the other Money a little bit better.
The Real Money, like you talking Cash?
No, the Pink Floyd song.
What do you mean? Oh,
the other Money song.
That was very yeah. That song's amazing. Yeah. We'll talk about them in another episode.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's enough jacking off of the Beatles for a good while.
Yeah, just this album. So of the two, what? Any like last minute notes?
It's a good album. It's got a couple strong originals, but I would say it really does shine through to me as like a cover album and what they were listening to at the time. I think you can use it as a great blueprint to see where their head was at the time.
Yeah, most definitely all of their influences and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited for later Beatles. I love early Beatles, great, like super amazing, but I like the more experimental stuff a little bit more.
Yeah, I would often change my like opinion. These are just the first two albums. If it was like the first, through Help, people would still consider that maybe like early Beatles because it's like in a span of a couple years or
I would say that's like almost the bridge, but like I would say it is still early Beatles, but it's like bridging into like
Help and Rubber Soul
mid-Beatles.
start getting spicy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when it starts getting very spicy.
Yeah, that's where shit starts getting crazy.
Yeah, but yeah, I very much like the songs, the two albums, and the singles that's are around the albums. It's what made him famous. It's what put him in everybody's face. Oh, it's pretty big, big history.
Yeah,
History.
great history, super historic. You have any closing thoughts on this one before we wrap this up?
No.
Nice. Oh wait, I have one last thing to say. We ran into John 5 today,
Oh yeah.
and that was super random.
Well, we didn't even talk
And
about
I gave him a
that.
fist bump.
Yeah.
That was fucking random.
Maybe we could do a John 5 episode. It would through all of his projects with because like
He's got some great ones, man. He's awesome.
might as well,
Super underrated
because
too.
we're not going to do an episode about Marilyn Manson because there's not much to talk about. We're not going to do an episode about Rob Zombie because music. I mean, yeah, there's not much to talk about.
We could use that as an excuse to shit on on new Motley Crue.
That will get its own. Oh, because he's in Motley Crue now.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go see the show. Let's go see him.
No, I was literally just saying like that would give us a chance to shit on new Motley Crue because I'm not a fan. I think they sound really bad.
No, I'm saying we could go see the show and then shit.
Oh yeah,
People watch all the fucking drunk
dude. That's
fucking.
Oh my god. I feel like there's just gonna be like old gilfs like, just like being nasty, wearing cowboy hats and fucking spilling beer everywhere. It's gonna be really gross.
Yeah, just like a drunk ass crowd. Dude, the fucking Red Hot Chili Peppers. That was. I think I'll stand by like the drunkest crowd.
Yeah, I
Like
could
there
totally
were
see
people
that.
like stumbling into like my aisle, and just like you couldn't do anything. Like they would just stand up and watch the show from there after drunk falling into your.
Oh,
Like it was
that's
like
a
crazy.
hazard, man. Somebody could fucking fall off the rail. Imagine.
Yeah, well, we were on the floor, but like
Oh
still.
yeah, but somebody else could. I mean, I'm sure the people higher up were even more drunk.
Someone did that at a weekend concert. I think someone died.
That's
someone
horrible.
like fell off. Like
I always think that shit when I'm walking like near the rail. I'm like,
really,
what if I fell right now? Like, what if somebody pushed me, or if I like tripped and like,
like at a
be
baseball game
fucked.
when you're on the third level or something.
yeah, you'd be fucked.
Yeah, I think it also might have happened at a Harry Styles concert. Imagine going to a Harry Styles
in
concert
peace.
and dying.
Worst way to go.
Yeah.
There's worse ways to go, but that's pretty bad. I actually don't think Harry Styles is that bad. Like his newer stuff. It sounds like Urban Outfitters music.
Yeah, there's nothing, I mean, I have against him. I'll say. Do you want that CD? I have that CD in the car. I haven't really listened to it much, but it's there.
Nah, I'm okay. But thank you.
All right.
All right.
So we're going to.
Peace.